Welcome back. I see some people are still coming back in from coffee, but I would like to get started. Once again, I'm Eric Schumacher-Rasmussen. I'm the editor and VP of Streaming Media Magazine and StreamingMedia.com and the conference chair for Streaming Media West. And the next thing we're going to talk about is live linear streaming. You know, all of the news, it seems, lately has been about SVOD services, one in particular. But, you know, people still want that lean back, turn on a live linear channel experience, and they just want to be able to turn on their TV and see what's on and do the 2019 version of channel surfing, which is a little different than it used to be, but which services that offer live linear are able to provide. And Philo is one of the most innovative live linear services out there. And and I'm speaking here. Welcome, Ben Chambers, the CTO of Philo, and we're going to talk a little bit about Philo in particular and live linear services in general. There's been some interesting news on the live linear front lately as well that I think might have an impact on Philo, and so let's dive in.
Cool. Well, thanks so much for having me. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thanks for being here.
Yeah.
So, for the people who don't know much about Philo, can you tell a little bit about the background, the genesis of Philo, and how you've gotten to where you are today?
Sure. Yeah. So for those who aren't familiar, we're a virtual MVPD. We have 58 channels of live linear content, and also a large on-demand library of about 40,000 titles. And it's an entertainment-focused bundle, and it's $20 a month. So that's sort of the high level. In terms of the genesis, yeah, it's an interesting background. We started out in the university space, actually providing a OTT streaming platform to universities for them to use to distribute TV to their students on campus, to kind of replace the cable plant. And that was pretty interesting. It allowed us to leverage the university's distribution rights. Mm-hmm. So we didn't have to go get our own rights to all the content. They had the rights to distribute everything on campus. And it really let us focus on building the product and the technology. So we built, everything from the signal ingest to DVR to all the client apps in-house. And that really provided, a foundation for us to be able to go eventually launch our service. The other interesting thing about that is that we were able to collect a whole bunch of data about what channels folks are watching, which shows are popular, which content is the most valuable, and sort of compare that to what the costs of content is. And that really helped us craft a package that we think is really valuable in the space. So yeah, we launched Philo, the direct-to-consumer service, 2 years ago, and it's been growing like crazy ever since. This year we've grown about 11% month over month. So if you do the math there, we're up over 350% of where we were just a year ago. So it's been exciting.
Can you talk a little bit about what your audience demographics are? Who is subscribing to Philo?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say at a high level, the demographics of a typical Philo user pretty much mirror the demographics of the country as a whole. We have pretty broad appeal to a lot of demographics. One sort of interesting thing is because we had used a data set from college students mm-hmm. to craft our sort of insights into packaging. We were pretty confident that we would have a lot of appeal with sort of a millennial kind of a cohort, but we have been pleasantly surprised. We didn't really know about other age groups, and we've been pleasantly surprised that actually there's really broad demographic appeal across a wide variety of age groups. It turns out cord cutting is a pretty powerful mm-hmm. Movement these days. Across, baby boomers, millennials, and sort of everything in between are looking to cut costs on their cable bill, and so that's something we're seeing.
So what sort of insights have you gleaned into the type of content people want in a vMVPD package?
Well, I mean, for us, it has again to do with value, and I think the thing that's notable for us is that we don't have sports on the platform mm-hmm. In our package, and that's really a result of looking at the cost of that. That sports drive a really large part of the cost, but so a lot of the sort of entertainment, education-focused content is there, and we just really thought it was a sort of unique bundle that wasn't there in the market that hit a kind of unique point. And in terms of other demographics things. a couple other insights you were asking about. I think we do skew a little bit more towards the female side in terms of a gender mix, which is that's kind of interesting. And in general, I think just we're sort of providing a package that is to a number of cohorts that have sort of been historically underserved in the market, and in general, folks with sort of less disposable income, but who are still looking for that kind of premium, over-the-top streaming experience. We're sort of hitting that sweet spot.
Right, and you talk about pricing, and what I mentioned in my introduction about some recent news, just last Friday, Hulu raised their price pretty significantly for their live linear offering. The no ad package, I think, or the limited ad package went from $50 to $60 a month.
Yeah.
You're starting to see these services get up into the cable TV range. So price point is obviously still a huge differentiator for Philo. Do you hear that from your customers, that one of the biggest reasons they choose Philo is the price?
Yes, for sure. That is a consistent message. I think it's sort of unclear whether, we don't really know for sure, I guess, whether people really have a deep understanding that, for example, sports is driving an outsized proportion of their traditional cable package. I don't know that many people know that like $30 of their cable bill is going just to sports.
Right.
But certainly I think people do recognize value when they see it. And again, so 58 channels for $20 a month, it's a pretty compelling price point. And we definitely hear from our customers that they love not paying for channels that they're not watching, which it's, that's kind of a no-brainer, but it's definitely compelling.
So the no sports feature that you kind of put forward is definitely a USP for you.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
And I know a couple of your other USPs are that you offer 3 simultaneous streams.
Yes.
Right.
That's right.
And unlimited DVR.
Right.
What sort of feedback do you have from consumers about how often they use those features and how much those features play a role in their choice of Philo?
Yeah. So I would say the three simultaneous streams. I would say that it's a significant minority of our users who take advantage of the multiple streams. Certainly not everyone is doing that. But I actually think at this point that I almost think of that as more like a table stakes feature. It seems like a lot of the services out there do have multiple streams. That's kind of something people expect at this point. The DVR thing is huge, though. That is definitely a really compelling feature that people love. We have a 30-day unlimited DVR, so you can save as many shows as you want, and we'll record all the episodes and keep them for 30 days. And that is something that the vast majority of our users are using it to some extent, and there's a lot of them that use it quite heavily.
Now we're getting into the technology a bit, which is good because you're the CTO.
Sure.
So let's talk a little bit about what have the biggest challenges been on a technical level that you have faced as Philo has grown and continues to scale?
Yeah, a couple pieces of that. So first of all, we really we think of ourselves as sort of a customer-centric company. We really try to, first of all, build the TV experience that we would want for ourselves as users, and then listen to the feedback we're getting from our customers. So one thing we've invested in a lot over the past year or so is platform support. So at this point we're on we have apps on 7 platforms. It's iOS, Android mobile, Android TV, Fire TV, Roku, Apple TV, and web. So that's the 7. And we're working on Chromecast right now. We don't have Chromecast yet, but that should be coming pretty soon. So we're really excited about that. That's definitely our sort of the ones we don't have yet, that's the most requested. And that's a big engineering effort. Certainly we're a small team, and supporting that many platforms is a big effort, but we think that's really important to have the devices, the support for the devices that folks are using. From a scaling perspective, there's a number of things I'd say that have been really interesting from a technical perspective. Obviously, with the growth rate that we've had that I mentioned, like 350% over the last year, there's been a lot of scaling work just to keep up with the user growth. So things figuring out caching and capacity planning and just sort of identifying bottlenecks in our back end. We built the whole tech stack in-house, so we don't outsource any of our signal ingest and delivery pipeline, except for the CDN. We outsource that.
Right.
So there's a lot of just scaling work to be done there, and that keeps us pretty busy. I think another pretty unique piece of our tech stack is we do server-side dynamic ad insertion against both the live linear feed and all the on-demand content. And so that basically means we are generating a custom per user per session manifest for each user.
Right.
So that can't be cached. It means we are, and the nice thing is that lets us show each user the ads that are most relevant to them, and hopefully therefore make the ads as pleasant as they can be. But that becomes quite a significant engineering challenge to keep up with the growth of all the sort of stitching and manifest delivery. And then I mentioned all the platform growth. Another pretty interesting piece is it just with a small team managing all those client applications and all the user interfaces for them, we increasingly want to do customized content recommendation and sort of user-specific experiences, and also be able to have curated content or collections of content for the season or things like that, and being able to deliver that out to 7 or 8 different platforms in a scalable way is challenging. So we actually sort of re-architected our whole UI so that the definition of what is in the UI and all that content is driven by the back end, and so we can basically add new, essentially sort of redefine what the UI looks like from the server side and have that immediately show up across all the applications.
And all of that tech is in-house, including the SSAI, the server-side ad insertion?
Yes, yeah, that's all in-house.
That's a pretty ambitious undertaking.
It is. It's an amazing team. I'm really privileged to work with our engineering team. I've learned a ton from them, and it's a really talented group of folks.
You mentioned that you're going to be adding Chromecast support, hopefully soon.
Yes.
Is that sort of the biggest technological challenge that you see facing you in the next year, or is there something else?
I mean, I would say some of the things I mentioned, just the continued scaling. I think we're going to keep investing in the ad technology. That's an important part of the business, and we want to make sure, again, that the ads we're showing folks, that's not anybody's favorite part of TV, but we do want to make sure that the ads that we show folks are as relevant to them as possible, as hopefully not showing them the same ad over and over again and things like that. So that's a place that we're really investing in. And then we do have some interesting new features we're working on. So the Chromecast support is one of them, and then some sort of cross-device control type features that we're interested in. Yeah.
All right. We recently saw in the last couple of weeks PlayStation Vue shut down, and so clearly the market can only support X number of services. Maybe not as many as are out there now. In fact, we've got another panel today that focuses on the topic of subscription fatigue. What are your thoughts on consumers' willingness to continually add subscriptions? And we're talking big picture here, not just live linear, but SVOD and AVOD. Do you think we're going to see a contraction, or do you think we're still expanding there?
Yeah, it's a great question. Well, I mean, first of all, I would just say that I think Philo has taken a pretty different approach from what we saw play out with PlayStation Vue, for example. We've, as I mentioned, focused pretty intently on sort of having a very valuable package and just on making sure that sort of our unit economics are healthy and that we have sort of an economically strong package, and that's both on the content cost sides as well as the delivery costs. So as I mentioned, we've done most of our tech in-house, and that I think makes a big difference as well. A lot of other services are outsourcing big pieces of that, and there's costs to that. The subscriber fatigue, that'll be really interesting to see how that unfolds. I think certainly with all the SVOD services and the proliferation of those, it's pretty interesting. As a user, as a viewer of TV, with all the content owners basically taking back the scripted content, the films and shows and everything onto their own platforms and sort of wanting to be their own distributors. Like, you know, you used to be able to get a lot of that stuff all on Netflix, and now you got to subscribe to HBO Max and Disney and all the others. So it'll be interesting to see if there is some consolidation that happens there to make that easier. The keynote this morning for the Fire TV, I thought that was pretty relevant actually, and what we're seeing across all the platforms, not just Fire TV, but from a technology perspective, more of the streaming device platforms are sort of moving to a content forward kind of a paradigm where you can search across all the different services, and I think that will probably take some of the pressure off just from the user experience. But I think in the end, it all comes down to value, and the subscriber fatigue. The mechanics of it is one thing; it's annoying to just subscribe and to switch apps and stuff, and I think technology can help there with some of that. But at the end of the day, you add up all of your bills, and if it starts to get up to what you were paying Comcast before, then maybe that's not a big win. Yeah.
I mean, I've been saying for years, I think that ultimately, cord cutting may not be the cost saving that it's initially been pitched as. Do you foresee services like Philo, maybe Philo itself, bundling with other services, other SVOD services in a package?
I think that's something we're definitely open to, and it could certainly make sense. Again, we've I think always said we're interested in, and we would also be open to having additional bundles of content, on our platform and in our app, assuming we could get the sort of bundling economics to a place that we thought was valuable for our customers. And so, yeah, I think that's certainly a possibility.
Sure. Yeah. Is sports ever going to come to Philo?
Well, it's sort of the same answer. I mean,
never say never, right?
Yeah. I mean, we think sports is very compelling content, obviously.
Yeah.
So it's not that we have anything against sports. It's just that when we sort of looked at the market and looked at the costs of the content, this sort of entertainment-focused package that we put together felt like it was a really good, underserved need in the market. But yeah, we would love to have all of the content, with packaging that sort of makes sense. I think if we had sort of our core package and then could add a sports package at a reasonable price, and maybe a movies package or something else. The challenge right now is you pull in some of the sports content and you have to carry everything, and then the price goes way up again. So.
Right. You mentioned earlier you're available now on 7 platforms, soon to be 8.
Soon to be 8. Yeah.
Do you have what sort of information do you have about what platforms are most frequently used by your users?
Yeah. So for us, the 10-foot streaming device platforms are by far the most popular. So Roku and Fire TV are the top 2, and I think for the most part our streaming device platform breakdown is sort of pretty close to what you would see if you just look at the market share for those platforms. We don't have any, I think, dramatically different sort of over-indexing on platforms. But yeah, the majority of our users are probably on those 2 platforms just from a pure minutes watched perspective. Yeah.
All right. I saw your CEO, Andrew, speak at NAB, and he also recently told Multi-Channel News that he thinks TV is going to become more social.
Yes.
What is Philo TV's social strategy, and how do you see that playing out?
Sure. Yeah. Well, I think we've always felt like TV is an inherently pretty social medium. It's, obviously historically people would gather around the TV and watch it together. But even today, when that's less of a phenomenon, TV is still one of the things that people talk about the most, like what they're watching and what is happening. And we think there's definitely some room to bring some of that into the sort of product experience. And so the way we're thinking about it right now is that the building block for that is a shared playback session. And that can be both across devices for a single user. So for example, you're watching on your streaming device and you can pull out your smartphone and browse additional content and hit play, and it starts playing on the big screen. so that's kind of the first version, is just cross-device control for a single user. But then if you have that primitive of a shared session that can be accessed simultaneously from multiple places, you can then take it one step further and have that shared between multiple users.
Right.
So they all have a synchronized playback session. And so that's something we've prototyped internally and been playing around with. And you know, I think we look forward to bringing various iterations of those kinds of experiences to our users as we kind of get the technology mature.
So sort of a Facebook Watch experience.
Yeah, maybe something along those
Something like
lines.
that.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Where do you want to see Philo in a year?
Well, I mean, I think right now we're just really excited to keep growing the service, growing the user base, and adding cool new features as fast as we can. So I think that right now, like I said, from a platform perspective, Chromecast is the big one we're working on, and then I think some of these sort of cross-device control and cross-user viewing things would be really, really fun to bring to market. So I think those are probably the big items we're looking at from a technology perspective.
Any other features that you're working on that you can talk about?
Those are the big ones right now. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Big picture, what are your thoughts on what we're going to see in the OTT market in general in a year? How do you think it's going to be different than the landscape we're looking at now?
Oh gosh. What's the quote? Predictions are hard, especially about the future.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, this industry is fascinating because it just moves so fast, and even just how different things look today from 1 year ago. I don't know that I have any outsized skill for predicting what we're going to see in a year. I mean, I think we may see some additional consolidation of services. I think that from a technology perspective, we're going to see more of the sort of unification happening.
Right.
As I mentioned, sort of making it a little bit more seamless on various devices. And I think, from our perspective, we feel pretty good about, from a competitive situation or just the overall landscape and how it's unfolding right now, not even so much from a competition point of view, but we view Philo as very complementary to all those services.
Right.
We don't have any content from Disney or NBC Universal or Warner Media or any of the sort of big new on-demand services that are launching. And Philo is one of the relatively few places you can still get this sort of live, unscripted, content that people are looking for. Things like live PD or reality TV shows or The Daily Show, things like that.
Right.
So we think that makes a really great sort of complementary pair with a lot of the other services that are out there. And also, you mentioned the sort of problem with subscriber fatigue and folks having too many services to pick from. Even on those services, there's sometimes sort of this effect of browsing fatigue, where
Right.
you fire up Netflix to try to find something to watch, and you're browsing through all these menus, and 10 minutes later you sort of give up, and you're like, maybe
Right.
I'll just read a book or something. And I think actually, live linear is a pretty compelling thing where you can just sort of tune to a channel and there's something on, and if you're into cooking, you go look at the cooking channel or whatever, and that sort of curated, immediate experience is still really compelling. I think a lot of people really appreciate that.
Right. I mean, one of my favorite articles ever from The Onion was they ran an article a few years ago saying that Netflix was going to introduce a browse-only option because half the time that's what you do. It's exactly what you described, right?
I missed that one, but that's really funny. Yeah.
And I think that what people find, like we said earlier, the Disney Plus and HBO Max, they get a lot of the media attention. And obviously, you've got the Marvel content, you've got the Star Wars content. But there are times when they just want to watch TV because that's what they grew up doing, and they're not necessarily invested in blockbuster content at that time. It's what they're doing while they're just chilling at home, while they're cooking dinner or something like that. And a service like Philo is perfect for that.
Right, exactly. Yeah, you're not gonna watch the new Star Wars movie while you're making dinner, because you wanna sit down and be engrossed in it and really have a cinematic experience. But you might want to put on like a cooking show and just have it on in the background, or listen to some jokes someone's telling or whatever. Yeah.
And again, getting back to Philo's price point, as other services that offer live linear are increasing their prices dramatically, for someone who wants that, You know, just this past weekend, I had 3 people who got the email from Hulu on Friday saying that the price was going up, saying I'm done with it. It's not worth that much to me. A service like Philo offers something, compelling content, like you said, curated content as well, at a price point that doesn't feel like it's killing your credit card statement.
Yeah, that's the goal. I mean, you know, I don't think anybody in this industry can ever promise that they'll never raise prices. You know, the nature of the beast is that a lot of the costs do go up over time. But yeah, that's, again, it's something that we've really put a lot of focus and thought into, is trying to structure things as much as possible so we can keep our prices low for our customers. It's sort of an important part of what we do, and putting customers first. And I mean, I think that's, putting customers first is an approach that goes beyond just the content package and sort of the technology part, which of course is what I spend a lot of time thinking about. But it extends to other things too, like customer support. You know, if you we pride ourselves on having a really great customer support experience. If you call Philo support, you will, you know, an actual human will pick up the phone at the other end in like under a minute, and they will be able to answer your question most likely. And if they can't, they will follow up with you later when they, you know, get to the bottom of it. So, you know, that's something that we think is really important too. So it's sort of a holistic sort of customer experience.
Yeah, I mean, Sandeep in the keynote conversation today talked about the importance of customer feedback to Amazon. Beyond that sort of customer support that you just talked about, what is Philo's approach to customer feedback regarding both the technology and the content offering?
Yeah, well, I mean, the customer support piece is huge. We get a lot of insight from our customers through that channel, and our support team is amazing, and they sort of aggregate all kinds of feedback, and that is you know, used both for sort of tactical early insights into things that, you know, like bugs or problems on the platform that we need to be looking out for, but also in terms of looking at feature requests and, you know, what kinds of things are important to folks and that we should be focusing on going forward. You know, obviously we also collect our own quality metrics. We're not relying on that customer feedback for that. So we want to have our own sort of qualitative measurements of those things. But I mean, and we also read obviously app reviews and, you know, social media feedback and all that stuff. So it's sort of I think, like most companies, you sort of need to have a holistic strategy for engaging with customers everywhere where they're having conversations.
And when you talk about what the feedback you're getting from customers about the features that they want, what have you heard the most in the last, let's say, 6 months or a year that you either have delivered or are working on delivering? Is it back to that platform support?
Yeah, that's a big one. I mean, you know, we did a lot of work when we first launched the service. We were just on Roku, iOS, and web. And so in the intervening time, we added, and you know, Android mobile was a huge request, and then Android TV, Fire TV, you know, Apple TV, et cetera. So those, you know, those things that drove a lot of those requests. Certainly, like Chromecast is way up there, which is why we're, like I said, focusing on that. I mean, also just if you look at the market share, it's still a very, even though it's one of the earliest of those platforms and has been around for a long time, it's still very popular. So, yeah, in terms of other features from folks, I think, you know, sometimes we get smaller features like feature requests, like people would like to be able to, we have a row of content where, you know, where we show you shows that you have been watching and stopped, so you can go pick up where you left off. And people want the ability to like remove a show from there that they, you know, they're sick of seeing. They don't want to finish watching it, and they don't want it in that list anymore. So small things like that we like pay attention to and work on. Yeah.
I mean, they're small, but as we all know, the user interface and user experience is almost, some would say, at least as important as the content itself, right? Because if you open up a service or subscribe to an app and it's difficult to use, your customers aren't going to stay.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, you know, it's funny, we spend a lot of time talking about the content package and all that stuff, but we actually really consider ourselves to be a technology company first.
Technology first,
and, you know, we're sort of technology and product company that happens to be in streaming TV as opposed to a media,
Okay.
company that have. And so, yeah, crafting those kinds of user experiences and really paying meticulous attention to the design of them and the execution of it, and listening to our customers and iterating on that feedback is a really big part of what we do.
Okay, great. We've got time for some questions from the audience. If anyone has a question, raise your hand. And I forgot to grab a handheld mic, but I can come around and kick my water bottle off the stage. Actually, I'll just come back and I'll just repeat the question, I think. So why don't you stand up and.
Sure. So for free trial, when people are signing up for free trials, you guys do something a little different where you just require a phone number.
Yes.
As opposed to a payment method. I'm curious, what the strategy behind that is and how that experience has been.
Let me just repeat the question so that we've got it on the video. For your free trial, unlike most services, you don't require a credit card number, you just require a phone number. Can you talk about your reasoning behind that and how that's worked for you?
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny, I forgot to mention that, but it's actually one of the pretty interesting differentiating things about how our service is set up. So yeah, like you said, it's a pretty compelling part of our sort of onboarding and trial is that you can, in order to try Philo out, all you have to do is come to our website, type in your mobile phone number, hit submit, and we text you a code or a link, and you can just click that link, you're immediately logged in. And in under 30 seconds, oftentimes under 10 seconds, you're basically in the product and you can immediately try it. That kicks off a 7-day free trial. And for the first 2 days of the 7 days, you don't even have to enter any kind of payment info. You're just free to completely browse the product and watch as much TV as you want. And then you get that 7 days free. And that is, I think, something that we have found to be extremely valuable and something that people really appreciate. And it's really just all about providing the lowest possible friction way for people to try the product out. We think that the product itself is sort of our best advertising and marketing. If we can get you to try it, folks really like it and tend to subscribe. So that's been a really unique thing. And also it's interesting as a sort of software engineer and who is familiar with various authentication methods. It's just an interesting authentication method as well. That's literally how we log people into the service, is by they enter their their phone number and we send them a text message. You can also then enter an email address and use that as your auth method if you want to, but we don't have any passwords at all as part of our authentication. And if you look at a lot of other services out there that are traditional sort of username and password auth, a lot of those are pretty easy to get hacked, especially just because people everywhere reuse the same password for all of their login accounts. I just read an article about how Disney Plus, there's already thousands and thousands of hacked accounts up for sale, and that's just human nature because people always reuse the same password, and it's really hard to break that habit. But the auth system we have is a little different and also avoids that problem.
Great. Other questions for Ben? Yep, over here.
Hi. How much of your inventory is sold programmatically, and do you plan on increasing that percentage in the next couple of years?
Yeah, so we actually have our advertising expert right here from the Philo team. Right now, most of our inventory is actually sold programmatically, sorry? Half. Okay, half, I'm being told. I've got my handler right here feeding me the answers. But maybe in terms of more details and where we're headed with that, maybe we could follow up offline. Happy to chat more.
Other questions? Oh.
Do you offer local broadcast channels on your service? If not, what's been the strategy behind that? And is that something that folks ask for?
We do not have any local broadcast channels, and the reason is that basically if you want to get the local broadcast channels, that tends to pull in all kind, basically you cannot license them by themselves. You have to get all the regional sports nets and all the sort of national broadcast channels, and it basically does not allow you to. It did not allow us to get sort of the bundling economics that we were looking for at a price point that we thought would be compelling. Yes, people definitely ask for it, and I think from a bundling strategy perspective, if we're able to, if sort of the bundling landscape changes and we're able to do that, we would love to do that. Today, what a lot of people do is, because you can also often get those local broadcast channels other ways, for example, with an over-the-air antenna or with a service like Locast, for example. A lot of people are using one of those methods to get the local broadcast channels, and then they're pairing it with a Philo subscription to get all of the traditional cable channels that you cannot get over the air.
All right, any other questions? All right, well, thank you very much, Ben.
All right, thanks very much, folks.